Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast, the Dr. Lino Show. Today, I would love to welcome Clementine Moss. In her memoir, From Bonham to Buddha and Back, The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer, Clementine Moss, this is so incredible, a deaf hypnosis practitioner and spiritual counselor who is also the founding drummer of the Led Zeppelin powerhouse Zepparella, offers her music career as a metaphor for spiritual practice. I love the alignment. Welcome to the A Little Less Fear podcast. So nice to have you, Clementine.
Thank you, Dr. Lino.
Yeah, no problem. I love this alignment. So, hey,
Yeah.
tell us about your personal growth story. Tell us about your journey. What brought you to where you currently are today? What got you to write this book? Tell us, we've got time.
Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna nutshell it. So because I feel like we have a abundance of topics, and that story is probably not the most interesting. But I grew up in California. I moved to New York City after I graduated from college. I intended to be a writer. I was floundering around in my life, trying to figure out who I was. I really didn't know who I was at all. And Two things happened when I turned 27. One was I went to my first Vipassana 10-day silent meditation retreat. And the second thing, major thing that happened, was that I took my first drum lesson. And as soon as I started learning how to play drums, suddenly it was kind of what I just wanted to do. And it was funny because right before I turned 27, I had a friend who was this really amazing psychic. And she said, you have all of these things that you could do in your life. You have the writing and you have these other things, these other interests. She said, but you're in danger of not choosing something. So you're going into your Saturn return, which is a big time of upheaval when you turn 27 years old, where things fall away that you no longer need. You're going to be questioning who you are even more than you already do. She said, the way through it is to pick one thing, do it every single day
I
for the
love
next
that.
3 years and see where that brings you. And that will bring you to where you're to be. And, I think in the same week she told me that I had just taken my first drum lesson, and I thought, I'm going to do that. And I really did. She said, you're going to question it. And I really did question it all the way through. I was like, what am I doing? I was never going to be a musician. But it was like drums just grabbed me and took hold of me. And
And so you
I,
kept at it every day for 3 years, the way that
mhm.
she suggested?
Yeah, after a year and a half, I started playing with bands, and I just kind of, it took me, all over the country, like, many, many, many times. And then overseas as well, playing my instrument. And now Zepparella's been together for the last 20 years, and I'm
Wow.
also a singer and songwriter, with original albums. And so there's that whole aspect of my life. For 30 years now, I've been a rock and roll drummer. That's how I make my living, right?
Hell yeah, rock on. I love it. I
It
love
was
it.
such a funny thing that happened.
It's
And at the
beautiful.
same time, I was practicing contemplative practice, mostly Vipassana meditation and dabbling in these other things. And I have a wonderful mentor who I met when I was in my early 20s, who is a spiritual teacher. And so she kind of guided me along the way at different points. So it was always something I was really, really interested in and really opening to.
Clementine,
And
let's go
then,
back. I'm sorry,
yeah,
before we keep going
yeah.
forward, I'm curious here. Let's go back to your first 3 years of drumming and how you kind of doubted it and you kind of questioned it. What kind of doubts and what kind of questions were going through your head before you continued that journey? When did you actually trust it? Can we, and if we can answer both questions, that would be great.
Yeah, I have to say that I kind of trusted it immediately. Now, I
Mm.
doubted it with my conscious, critical, you should be something else, right? You
Okay.
should be doing something else. You should be, I don't know. Like for a while, I thought I would go back to school, get a master's in writing, and or I was offered jobs because I was always a temp, right? So I'd be offered these very well-paying jobs and different corporations. And um but drums, as soon as I sit sat down, and it's the case now. When I sit down at drums, I feel at home. I feel that it just feels like home to me. And it's fascinating and wonderful in that, for my most of my life up until that point, I had been seeing myself as a writer, which is a very solitary life. And I started to feel like I want a creative output that I could. I used to think at least I could listen to the radio if I was like a painter or something, or
Right.
but I have no, like, to have collaboration just
Uh-huh.
seemed so wonderful to be playing with other people. So it was the drums, and then it was also the spirit of community that music offered me, that I think I was really drawn to. And I think when I question myself, it's always with that small self mind that says that I should be different. I
Right.
mean, many of us have it. Our culture is
Oh
based
yeah.
on that. That's how, in a way, that's how capitalism works. We should be
Sure.
different. We need
I
this
know,
thing,
right?
right? So yeah, so that's, I think that's the answer to your questions. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So then you continued the journey. You finally felt at home, sitting down, playing the drums, and then so from there on, things just took off.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they took off. I haven't been, I'm not like wildly successful. I'm always kind of eking out a living playing music, but it's okay because it all kind of works. And I love it. I love it dearly. And playing drums opened me up to being able to write lyrics and songs and sing. Now I'm fronting a band, and so the world of music feels like a really like endlessly interesting place. I have endless enthusiasm for music. So that's really wonderful. And along the way, I was, in my contemplative practice, I started to really start to be able to view non-reactively my mind, right? Which is what sitting and meditation teaches us. And I started to see that pretty much every thought that I had most of the time was a judgment about myself, and a
Yeah.
judgment about how things should be different, and a judgment about how I should be different, how I wasn't good enough, of in a million different ways.
How did the
Um,
spirituality aspect come into play with music? When did this happen?
well, so the spirituality, I mean, I feel like that aspect of me has always really been percolating under the surface in a lot of millions of different ways in my life. But once I took that 10-day Vipassana course, and I really was able to step out of the conscious critical mind into that wide awareness of everything,
Uh-huh.
that wide awareness where I can view my thoughts as not me,
Right.
view my thoughts as something that rises up because of my history and my body chemistry, right? Thoughts are just these physiological processes, and started to not have to react to all of them. It, I felt it helped me become a better musician because, when you're playing drums, when you're at the drum set, you have four limbs doing, four
Doing
different
everything.
things. And you really have to put your mind in the center, and you can't really react. If I start really like paying attention to one of those limbs, it's going to kind of all fall apart, right? I have to kind of keep that awareness, that non-reactive awareness. If I start thinking about, who came to the show, or what that guy's doing over in the corner, or, what that person's doing over there, or how many people are in the room, if I start doing that, I'm robbing myself of the experience of really being in the moment. And I'm not allowing the music to play through me. I'm in my mind, and my mind is going through patterns and making my body do things. And that you can tell when a drummer is playing from their mind, or when a drummer is playing and the music is moving through them. And so as I had both of these aspects of myself, the meditation aspect and the drumming aspect, I started to see that both of them informed each other. As I, was able in practice to really open up that, or on stage to be able to open up that freedom within my drumming, it felt like I was able to recognize that even more in my meditation practice, those fields of awareness. And the more that I meditated, the better my drumming would happen. I mean, I'm kind of a bad practicer drum wise. A lot of it is because I've lived in cities all my life and had to
Mhm.
travel to practice, right? So, um, but there have been times where I've gone for a couple of weeks without touching the drums, but I've been meditating a lot. And
Mhm.
when I come to the drums, I'm like, I can't believe what opened up. This technique that I was working on, it's there, right? So the two are so they're so connected. And for a long time, like everybody, I thought, okay, there's my spiritual life and there's my drum life. And in the drum life, I'm being the rock and roller, and I'm partying with the band and driving all over the place and getting mad at the promoter and all those
Yeah.
things, right? And then there's my kind of spiritual life. But as time went on, I really started to see that the two are just one thing. It's just me. This is me, right? This is the
Definitely.
big thing of Clem. And it
Clementine, I have a
really,
question about what you
yeah,
said
yeah,
earlier about non-reactive awareness.
yeah.
Would you say, as you were saying that, and you're talking about music, the word that came to my head was flow. Do you feel that when you're in this non-reactive awareness, it allows you to stay in flow with your inner being, your just natural talent flowing through you?
I think that the flow state, that thing which everybody is always trying to reach, whether it's
Sure.
in sports or,
Right, right,
in
right.
music or anything, that flow
Uh-huh.
state. I think that it's another word for that non-reactivity,
Uh-huh.
that ability to really be in that time, almost, it can feel almost timeless place,
Mm-hmm.
and I think everybody has those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just driving, sometimes
Yeah.
it's, whenever and I think drums are really conducive to this. Any musical instrument is, because when you're putting your body at work, when you're putting that front attention to work, doing a mechanical thing, then you're able to open up to that awareness that's behind the front attention, right?
Yes.
And that's what the Buddhists talk about when they talk about the eightfold path, right? The right concentration is that front attention of the mind that's able to focus and bring yourself back to where you need to be, to watch the sensations in the body, or watch the breath, or watch the mantra, or whatever it is that you're focused on. And the more pinpointed that front attention can get, then that wider awareness starts to open up. And then when you're in a time where there's a kind um, of of like outer stress, which I would say maybe it's running a marathon, or maybe it's being on stage and performing. For me, it's being on stage and performing. Then my that front attention is goes into an automatic mode, right?
Yes.
That's why I've practiced, so that when I'm there, I can relax and just let myself do what I've been trained to do. And then I get to really be in that wider awareness. And I think that's what the
Yes.
flow state is.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. There's also really like a deep inner peace and joy happening at the same time. So while you're saying that, so I used to sing mariachi professionally when I was a teenager,
Oh,
and I would
neat.
love to go back to singing again. I've been training my voice. I sing every weekend, and I'm also a poet, so I write. I started writing when I was 7, and what I've noticed that when I write and when I sing, there's a similar channel that happens, just the way that you're describing it right now. And I remember that there's nothing that satisfies me more than being on stage, because when I was on stage and I'm singing, it's almost as if at what you're talking about, like I practice and I'm finally there. And the minute the voice starts coming out, it's like all of a sudden I'm in this relaxed state. I'm in harmony. I'm in full joy, and I'm feeling every word that's coming out. And that's the way it is for me when I write poetry. And I can imagine the way that you're describing it, it's very similar. So I can feel what you're saying. And while you're saying this, I'm wondering, my question to you is, where does passion come into play? Is passion also flow state? And if it is flow state, is that also coming from you, a higher source, the meditative process, where we both come into alignment with our spirit, our all knowing?
I would I like the word passion, but I would maybe substitute it for the word enthusiasm,
Ooh, yeah.
right? Because enthusiasm, because passion, for me, the
Yes.
word passion has an element of short burn, right? Like
Okay.
it's like a flare, right?
Yes.
And that's wonderful when you get those sparks where it just kind of overtakes you,
Right,
right?
right.
But the enthusiasm is like it's like a generative energy,
It's
right?
radiating.
Yeah, it's radiating and it's moving forward and it's developing and it's changing and it's morphing and it's like enthusiasm
So
keeps
true.
going. And passion might be, you could say you have a passion for something, but it's the enthusiasm that keeps the
That
energy
keeps it
bubbling and
going.
percolating. Yeah.
Right. Oh man, Clementine, I love that. I feel enthused just talking about this. This is incredible.
Singing is the perfect marriage between technique and soul, right? Because the technique, it's like you open your mouth and you're just going to do what you do. You're not, most of the time, you're not thinking about the technique because you got to tell the story,
Right,
right?
right.
So it's kind of, you're in that perfect, that is, I can see why you would be in flow state. And then,
Yeah.
with the poetry, and I mean, I think you should combine those two things,
I
right?
would love to
And
combine them both. I would
all
love
you
to.
have to do is just have a drum going. There, the song is in the drum. This is, I really believe, well, of course, I'm a drummer, right? But you pull up a little drum beat like on your phone, on a
Uh-huh.
little app, like just a little drum beat, and just start to rhythmically speak your poem over the drums. And then what'll happen is a melody will come. A melody will come out of that. And then you can, eventually when the melody kind of sits like fixes in your head, then you can say to a guitarist or a piano player or somebody who plays like is a, master at their
Yeah.
instrument, right? Then you can say, okay, this is what I'm singing. What do you play? And because you're a singer, you probably will actually start to kind of hear what chords will go over it, right? Or go
Yeah.
underneath it. And that's the way to write, an easy way for you to write a song. Start with rhythm, you know.
I
We
love
think
that. I've
about,
actually been doing a little
yeah.
backwards. So I've created this I'm creating this business. It's amazing. It's on Instagram. I actually just created an Instagram with all of my video poetry in which I have my poetry, but I also voice it and I have music in the background with it. And
Hmm.
I'm absolutely in love with it. And but what the one thing that I'm doing is I'm putting the music after I've written the poetry, but I love your idea to actually start creating it with the beat first and see what I get after that. Oh
Yeah.
man, I love that we're connecting, Clementine.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I can't wait to hear what you come up with.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Clementine, I'm really curious to continue this conversation here on music and spirituality because you hardly hear this. It's kind
Yeah.
of like one or the other, or it's just spiritual music, but you're a rock and roller and you're combining the things that you've learned on the road and on your by yourself as well. But I'm curious, what I mean, how do you keep this meditative practice when you're on the road and you're busy and like you said, you're dealing with a lot of people and crowds and PR and everything? How do you actually get into that quiet zone for yourself?
It's I think what happens well, what happened to me was that I started realizing that every moment is an opportunity to be in that meditative state. Every moment,
Yes.
kind of what we were talking about beforehand, every moment is an opportunity to take a deep breath and to just notice, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? What thoughts are coming through my head? Where's my reactivity? I see myself react, I see myself get like blow up, like, somebody cut me off in traffic. And then I take a breath and I'm like, oh, interesting. Wow. I wonder where that's coming from right now,
Yeah.
and another time I would maybe be like, okay, go ahead, call them a name and let
Nice.
them go in front of me. But, you know, um, so I think it becomes just a part of life. Now, sitting in, meditation is really important because we're training ourselves. We're training ourselves to be in that state when things are chaotic. And the more that we do, like 5 minutes a day, try to sit and just notice, over time, we start to notice our reactivity becomes a little less intense in our lives.
It really
So
does.
I think, formal practice is really important, but um, I've found, I love the times where my life opens up and I have days where I can really sit for long periods of time, and it's really valuable. What I've been really concentrating on doing, no matter what, these days, is sitting in a kind of state of prayer and gratitude,
Hmm.
um, more than concentrating on opening up that field. As soon as I sit and open to prayer and gratitude in the morning, I feel that I immediately connect to that space that maybe I would be looking for um, in a long meditation. I've come to a place recently where my practice has become more of what they would call a meta practice, right? Which is a kind of outward, and out, like sending energy out to the world, to the earth,
Hmm.
um, to humanity.
How do you
Um,
do that?
I have a series of prayers that I offer in the morning, meditative kind of prayers that I offer.
Mhm.
I open my heart and say these things, and then I sit in. I started um, to work with a really wonderful teacher who you should have on your show. He's really great. His name's Ishtar Howell, and he teaches a kind of mantra meditation, just to kind of shake things up in my internal world. And when I was doing that, after about 3 weeks, I had this big realization as I was walking out down the street, like I feel like I am swimming in gratitude all the time. And then I
Wow.
realized, oh, the mantra, it's an internal mantra. The mantra is about gratitude. And it is a series of phrases about being gratitude, like in gratitude. And I thought, oh, like, okay, something's working here with this mantra meditation, which I had never done before. So
Did you
um
find when you were doing this gratitude mantra and actually living more in that gratifying state of mind, did you find that more things started to come in alignment for you?
I think that what I started to do even more was, in gratitude, being gratitude for what is,
Mhm.
and not thinking that things should be different. Now, at one point I remember saying to myself, I think that I've lost all ambition. And when I said it out loud, it was like, I even said it to a couple of friends, and it was like I had said the dirtiest word possible. Like, as Americans, we should be ambitious, right? As people, we should be ambitious,
Right.
right? And so to say I had lost ambition, but it didn't mean I had lost enthusiasm.
Ooh, yeah.
So, what a teacher told me was, it's not that you've lost ambition, it's that you've removed the goalposts, and that you're following your enthusiasm, and to move you forward. And enthusiasm with gratitude means that everything that is happening is I feel like it's a kind of state of grace to be able to be there. Now, am I there all the time? No.
Right.
especially when I'm doing my, I'm in the like weeds with a lot of bureaucracy right now with finances and stuff like that. And believe me, it's as challenging as it ever has been. And yet, I just really trust that that what's here is what's supposed to be here, and I follow my enthusiasm um, toward just in that way that I would like to try to be a light for others. And I don't mean a spiritual teacher. I don't mean, a magnificent guest. I just mean that when I walk down the street, that maybe my feeling of gratitude, my feeling of lightness somehow energetically affects people that I'm not even, that
And it
are
does. It automatically heals people.
I hope, I hope, because there's so many people who are working so hard and diligently in the world
They are.
to make incredible changes and really help people. And, I'm doing what I can. And at this point, this is what I'm trying to do. So,
Well, you're
um,
doing it. You're not trying, you are doing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
Uh,
curious about going back to how you said ambition is removing goal parts. Can we go a little deeper into this? I'm trying to get a little clearer understanding with this. So, what I'm understanding with that is whenever you have goal, and you mean goal as in GOAL, right? Goals, removing the goal part.
Goalposts, goalposts.
Goal
Uh-huh.
posts,
Yeah, right.
goals, because whenever there are specific goals, there tends to be sometimes some resistances towards it. So, is that what you mean by that? What do you mean by removing the goal
I
posts?
don't think it's so much removing the resistances. I think
Okay.
it's recognizing what are we trying to achieve with that goal?
Okay.
Is that goal set up by culture? Is
Uh-huh.
that goal set up by some idea of myself that's no longer valid?
Right.
If I say, oh, I should be the very best drummer in the world, who's saying I should be the best drummer in the world, right?
Uh-huh.
It's this, I have a feeling that if I'm not this successful, in my life, if I'm not at this level of, appreciation or, success or finances, all of those things, those are other people's goalposts, right? It's not mine. So if what I say is, I want to be able to play my drums every day, and when I play my drums for other people, have them respond and feel the love that I feel for what I do, that's a different kind of goal than me saying, okay, next year I'm going to be on the cover of Modern Drummer. Now I could, feel like if that feels like it ends up happening, well, then that's what happened. And maybe that's a part of it. And maybe it's
Mhm.
coming um, from that enthusiasm that I've
Mhm.
gotten so excited about what it is that I'm doing, and
Mhm.
I'm focusing on the kind of drumming and the kind of career choices that would get me there, right? If that was important to me,
Right.
that's fine. But if being on the cover of Modern Drummer is the only mark of my success, then it's whose mark is that? Who decided that,
Right.
right? And whose voice am I listening to in my head?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It seems almost competitive in nature as well. When if we think that way, even in the ambition part, it seems a little more competitive, as you were saying. Like who's saying this, and who are you really almost like competing against or competing towards? If you're really going inward and really following your own enthusiasm, it's going to be a totally different feeling than the push that you would with ambition and goalposts.
Yeah, when I listened to I just listened to this read this great book called When the Drummers Were Women. And the woman who wrote it, I'm blanking on her name right now. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible with remembering names, but she really followed her passion. She started off being really interested in a frame drum, and then she started kind of studying it, and really just was got kind of overtaken with studying all about where it came from. And then she was invited to play with some other people, and she would be on these stages with these people, these amazing musicians who had devoted their lives to it. And she's like, what am I even doing here? Like, I just was excited about playing the drums, but it was her enthusiasm that brought her to where she was to be. And now,
Yes.
even though she's passed away, she's still hugely influential in the way people see that particular instrument. So, and drumming, period.
Hmm.
And I really saw her as somebody who, yeah, she just, some people just get completely, artists get completely carried away by doing a thing, and they go. It's
Yeah,
really
totally.
exciting. And without that, all of those barriers of who she's supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, barriers. Exactly. That's what they are.
Yeah.
They're barriers.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
become barriers. Hey,
Right.
so Clementine, you talk about what the negative internal voice offers and how to relieve it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by this?
Mm-hmm. I think the negative internal voice, I did something long ago with a wonderful creativity coach. I was having a hard time writing. I felt like I had a big block, right?
Hmm.
And and so, it was the first time that I ever did that kind of visualization, visualizing the feeling and kind of,
Yes.
anthropomorphizing the feeling, right?
Right.
And it was the first time that I'd done that. And he said, okay, so close your eyes and bring up the critic. Who is the critic? What does the critic look like?
Who is the critic? I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Who's the critic? Okay. And for some reason, I saw very clearly a woman in a gray suit, like gray flannel suit with her hair up in a bun and glasses on. And she was very judgmental. And he said, okay, well, there she is. All right. And where are you in relation to her? And I was like a little kid, like getting in trouble.
Wow.
And she said, okay. He said, well, so what does she want? Ask her what she wants. And very clearly, I heard she doesn't want me to fail.
Mhm.
And, um, and so he said, okay, she doesn't want you to fail. Is there anything that you could do? What would make her like calm down and not be so afraid of you failing? And I thought, if I div- like showed up every day and really did my best, then she would quiet. And as soon as I said, okay, I'm gonna start writing a bit every day, and if I really devote myself and try my best, it was like then she like took her hair out of the bun, and she kind of walked away. And I realized that my critic was there because it wanted me to not half-ass it.
Mhm.
It wanted me to really show up, to not, um, some things. Writing has always come fairly easy for me, and I can see the ways that I hadn't dug in to really, being vulnerable in my writing, being truthful in my writing, all of these things that I recognized that I hadn't really looked at. And immediately I could see, if I show up and I promise to be as truthful and vulnerable and honest as possible in my writing, um, then the critic will quiet.
I love
Um,
this. So
and
basically, the negative internal voice, being the
mhm.
critic, is actually a window of opportunity for you to see where you can expand and grow, and what that actual inner voice is trying to tell you, how it's actually trying to help you and level you up into a different type of awareness.
Well, in that case, definitely. Now, I have other negative internal voices,
Mhm.
and especially around body image and,
I see. Yeah,
food and weight and all of those
sure.
things. And when I look at
They're
that
different.
negative voice, what is that negative voice trying to do? It's
Right.
trying to tell me that I'm not good enough. Okay. Who's telling me that? Where did that
Yes.
voice come from? Is that me? That's
Mhm.
not me. That's something external. That's something external that I picked up, right? I've picked something up from the culture that tells me that I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough.
Right.
And what's its what does it need? It needs to keep me feeling that way so that I'm constantly looking outside of myself for things that will make me be good enough, right? So it
Right.
will searching always for, all the things that we know that everybody searches for in order to be the most beautiful, the thinnest, the most healthy, all of these things that we're constantly being, fed and fed and fed,
How did you
that
figure
we
that out,
need.
Clementine? The difference between those two voices? I mean, because they're both telling you somewhat heavy things. And how were
Hmm.
you able to weigh which one is your one towards constructing something better and positive, and one that's just not even who you are as a person at all? How were you able to differentiate the both?
Yeah, I think that these, through a lot of interaction with these voices, not
Hmm.
being afraid to hear these voices,
Hmm.
and that second negative voice, there is an aspect of it as well that does come from me that says, you know what, be mindful about your choices,
Hmm.
and recognize that, feeling bad about yourself is not helpful, but being mindful, if you're mindful of your choices, then that voice will lessen.
Hmm.
And recognizing, and also doing a lot of work to recognize all the ways that I've been indoctrinated, in this culture to believe these certain things about,
Right.
the way that we look and the way that we are in the world, and doing a lot of work and interaction with that voice to say, actually, that's not true.
What are some good
What's
questions
true
to
is,
ask that voice?
yeah,
What are some good questions? 'Cause right now you kind of said that, like, who's asking this? I really like that question. What are some other questions
yeah.
that people can ask themselves when deciphering which voice is really theirs and what's going to help them and what's going to not help them?
Well, I think the biggest question, I mean, the thing that I think all of us should be asking is, what makes me think that I'm not worthy? What makes me
Yeah.
think that I'm not worthy of love, of knowing, of grace? What makes me, when did I start thinking that I wasn't worthy? And whose voices do I hear when I think that I'm not worthy? Maybe it's somebody in my early childhood that told me, or exhibited behavior that made me feel that way. Um, maybe it is the culture, like, well, I'm this size and I'm never going to be accepted in this way in this culture. Maybe I don't think I'm pretty enough, you know, or that I'm, like all of the ways that we were told that we're not worthy. But I think to really get at the bottom of, why do we think that we're not worthy? Because, and now this is goes into some spiritual kind of stuff, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
if you think about it, maybe we feel we're not worthy because we deny the fact that we are able to know ourselves as a piece of the divine, that we are not able to know ourselves as holy as anything, and that everything is holy. Everything is, like, when you think of, the Hindu or the Buddhist idea of God, like, everything is divine, everything is God, right? There's nothing outside of God. If something is outside of God, then nothing is of God, right? And
So
so
true.
that means us. That means us too. When I realized in a meditation I was doing that I couldn't feel worthy of unconditional love coming to me from the deity that I was, doing this meditation with. I couldn't, they said, okay, now bring the feeling of unconditional love coming back to you. And I just kind of blanked out, right, of this meditation. And I realized, oh my gosh, like, I don't think I'm worthy. I think that I'm intrinsically I'm bad, you know? And when you really get down to that, and it's not fun to do that investigation, right?
No, it's
It's
not.
not fun to move through all of your vulnerability and move all the way down to all the ways and really question that deep, dark belief that you have that you are not godly, God, divine,
Right.
however you see it, or even just worthy of love, even if you don't believe in anything woo woo. If you truly believe that if people really knew you, they could not love you. So many people feel this. And
They do. I'll say the majority.
yeah, and I think that's the big investigation.
It really is the big investigation. So how did
Mhm.
you finally realize that you are worthy and that you are worthy of unconditional love?
Well, I was through a great deal of spiritual practice, different practices, different ways of working into it. I was in a contemplative psychotherapy program for a couple of years, and Buddhism is a really wonderful, scientific way of approaching the inner world. And there are quite a few really wonderful techniques in order to dive into those beliefs that we have. Starting from that vipassana of a way of viewing our internal world, viewing our thoughts, viewing these beliefs, viewing our emotion from a distance, non-reactively, and then to be able to work in certain modalities to ask those kind of questions,
Right.
to come through. So, and I'll tell you, Lino, when that happens and you really do feel worthy, that you are indeed a piece of that, when you come upon that piece of yourself that is that holy place, then boom, you see it in every single being,
You
you
really
know
do. Oh
and
yeah.
that's what I mean when I said before that I was it's kind of a meta meditation now, where it's like I feel almost kind of like opening that internal world to me. It opens, like I ask to see and I see it. But what really feels like it expands the bigger and bigger and bigger, like almost like a circular thing, is when I start to move my energy outwards into prayer for others. It's just that inner world within me opens wider and wider and wider. It's the great gift of um of that kind of giving. Yeah.
It really is. Oh, I get that when I meditate. I love it. I absolutely
Mm.
love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk about your book. It's called From Bonham to Buddha and Back: The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer. What got you to write this book? What can somebody find in your book? And what's the biggest takeaway?
Well, kind of what we've been talking about is a
Oh,
lot of what
excellent.
it is. Yeah. So I started writing a blog called Listen Drumming in 2016. And I thought, okay, I'll put all these pieces together after a certain time. And then I thought, oh, shoot, I actually have to make it into a book and write a bunch more. so, excuse me. So it really is about um, you know, how my meditation practice and my drumming world, how they meet. There are a lot of there's 100 little pieces of writing. There are a lot of pieces about, just the things that have come up from me being on the road, being in places, working through that negative voice, reading YouTube comments, what's it like to just be this, this person mildly in the public eye and having to deal with, all of that and do that from what I know about my own worthiness and all of that. And then there are a couple themes in there, right around the time that I found meditation and drumming, my father died. He died really young. And so it's a bit of a love story to my father as well, because he never got to see me play drums. And he's a big reason that I love music so much. And then it is a love song to drums, you know. Drums also brought me, several years ago into shamanic practice and spiritual counseling with this wonderful modality called depth hypnosis, which was created by a teacher named Isa Gucciardi in Berkeley, California. And depth hypnosis marries uh, psychology, Western psychology, especially transpersonal psychology. So that is psychology that brings spirit into it, right?
Love it.
And then Buddhism, especially Tibetan
Mhm.
Buddhism, because Tibetan Buddhism has a big basis in the shamanic tradition of Tibet, the Bun tradition. So there's a lot of sound and light, energy healing. And then shamanic work. And so we use the shamanic journey a lot in depth hypnosis. That's where the hypnosis part comes from. It's about using that shamanic journey, that shamanic trance, to access our internal metaphoric systems. And through it, we do things like, soul retrievals and power retrievals, past life regression. Um, However, the view of this modality is that it is helping the client become their own shaman. I, as the practitioner, am not the knower, I'm more of the guide, and I'm helping the person interpret their own internal system, their own internal metaphoric system. I don't know what they mean when they say they saw, a crow come down and dive into the water. I don't know what that means. They know what that means. That's their image. But it's so in this we help them come into their own power in this way. So it's a beautiful practice. And again, drums brought me there. Ultimately, or the drum is very prevalent in that
Have
work.
you ever experimented with other, I mean, because you're talking about shaman, and I'm kind of just thinking about different types of drumming to get people in that hypnotic meditative state. Have you experimented with different ways of rhythmic bringing in rhythmically through different types of drumming? I guess more of the spiritual aspect of a human being.
Well, I mean, the frame drum is, they say that um, has the same frequency as the center of the earth, right?
Whoa, I love
And
it.
80,000 years at
Oh my
least,
goodness.
people have been using the drum for ceremony and to create
Mhm.
the trance.
Right.
And it's incredibly powerful. And they've done actually, scientific studies where they view people's brains as the drum is happening, and it activates, one of those. Is it theta? I can't remember
It is
which.
theta. Yeah, the
Yeah,
theta
yeah.
meditative state,
Right.
brain waves. Yeah.
Right. And we know this from the binaural beats, right,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they're coming up
yeah.
with and stuff. But yeah, it's a real thing. And humanity has known this for, tens of thousands of years. So um yeah, so I think the drum is really, really powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely powerful. You're powerful. Thanks for sharing your incredible wisdom light here on A Little Less for Your podcast. I love this conversation. Where can our viewers or watchers and our listeners, viewers, watchers, listeners of all over the world find your book and your music?
Thank you. Thank you, Lino. You're just a delight. My website is clemthegreat.com. I picked that a long time ago, and I don't even hear it anymore,
Oh
but
my
every now
goodness.
and
I
then I
love
say
it.
it and I'm like, oh gosh, that's what I decided. Clemthegreat.com, and the book is on Amazon. It's also on Audible. I narrated the book on audio, so it took me forever to do that. So it's from Bonham to Buddha and back. It's Bonham is John Bonham, of course, from Led Zeppelin. He's
Love it.
been a big part of my life for the last 20 years. So there is a lot of talk about Led Zeppelin in the book as well. So yeah.
I'm certain of it. Clementine Moss, everybody, here on the Little Less Fear podcast. Her website is www.clemthegreat.com. Incredible conversation about her personal growth, spirituality, drumming, meditation. It's just been all awesome topics. Thanks so much for sharing all of your wisdom light here. I look forward to keeping in touch with you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Dr. Lino. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.